FRS boy, that's all three of us.
Wait.
What do you mean?
Yeah, it's true. we all suck. No one's as cool as Scott Chadwell.
Actually, no, you're worse because you're into your second one now.
Yeah. I had an opportunity to get out of one, and then
You chose not.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm banned from going to the bathroom.
He's banned from
because I've done it for
bathroom
like 4 podcasts
forever.
I've done it too many
You
times.
just can't keep it in. Just can't keep it in. And he has made me do a significant amount of extraneous editing work. All right, I think we're all recording.
Sweet.
Do you know this guy lives in Hamilton?
Yeah. What the fuck?
Wait,
am I
what does
doing
that
here?
mean? I used to live in Hamilton.
No, as in like
It
he
means
drove
that,
a very long time to get here.
Yes,
And
you did.
he's got a long drive to go home.
Yeah,
too.
True.
I was telling Jason as I pulled up like last night. I was like, what was I thinking?
Nah, you were thinking I need to tell my story. That's what you were thinking.
I've already. Okay. No,
Yeah.
I'm just an attention whore.
Nah.
What's going on? Yeah.
On a subconscious level, I think that's all of us.
Yes.
Well, okay. So I think this is going to be an exciting episode because this guy's got a story to tell.
Are you recording now?
Oh, it's always recording. That's the thing.
Cool.
You never know.
Yeah.
Oh, do you need a little bit more warm up? You need to get more comfortable.
I'm good. Yeah.
you need a little bit more foreplay before you get going here. All right.
Damn.
What's going on?
All right. So welcome everyone back to another episode of the 2-Track Mind Podcast. I'm Jason, and today here we have Patrick and our special guest, Phil Williams Oliveira.
You actually got my name right.
Is that
government
Oliveira?
name.
Okay.
I'm impressed.
Okay. But do you go by Phil?
Yeah.
Or Philip?
Yeah.
What do you prefer?
Everybody but my wife and my parents call me Phil. So Phil's a pretty safe bet.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll go with Phil.
Yeah.
So Phil, he's been making a splash and some waves in the FRS BRZ first gen and second gen circles with his FA2024. We'll call it a Frankenstein build, because of the K24 K20 situation. But I think what you guys will find in this episode is that it's going to be a little bit different. But before we get to that story, which I know a lot of people are really interested in hearing, I think it would be a disservice to everyone listening to start there, because we got to go way back and just understand the entire narrative and the entire path, very winding path to where Phil ended up today with a super sweet track built FA2024 BRZ. So, before we kind of get into it, Phil, in your own words, who are you and what do you do?
Oh God. An FRS boy.
That's the title on your resume when you send it around, and you're thinking to yourself, "Why am I not getting any callbacks?"
No, I've been doing track stuff for a long time. I've been writing for a long time. I've been making content for a long time. I've been wrenching for a long time. Yeah, I just like doing dumb shit and Japanese cars. Yeah,
That's like pretty much everyone.
everybody. Yeah.
So if we really step back, right, and think about how you ended up, in your own words, FRS boy, how we got there. One of the questions I really like to start with to kind of set the tone and make people really relatable as guests to our audience is to talk about your very first car memory, whether it's, a sports car related or just something mundane. What's the thing that's very vivid in your memory?
Yeah, so I as I was talking to you guys before we began recording, I was listening to the Scott Chadwell episode, and it was incredible the way he grew up like rolling around in the back of his mom's Corvette, and I was like, fuck, I wish I had a story like that, because nobody in my family really gave a shit about cars. I was actually way more into aviation when I was a teenager. I got my pilot's license before I could learn how to drive, and I got my driver's license because I needed to be able to drive to the airport where I had a part-time job. So I got my driver's license. I was like, this shit's kind of fun. I was driving my mom's 06 base model Civic. And I really like driving fast. So naturally crashed it twice.
Twice. All right. What was the first time?
Yeah. So first time I live in Brampton. So I was
okay. End of story. Next story.
So I was going to pick up my girlfriend in Brownlee City Center, and I understeered right into the wall in like the on ramp going down.
Oh no.
Yeah, just because I didn't know how to drive, man.
That's so Brampton, man. It's not the car's fault. You were just in Brampton. It's okay.
Yeah. Second time was way more innocuous. Second time I was in college, and I was working 2 jobs, and I was super sleep deprived, and I fell asleep and rammed into the back of a Suzuki.
Oh,
damn.
Suzuki. That's a rare occurrence then.
But yeah, point being, like, I just like driving fast. And then I again worked at an airport, met a dude with an NB Miata. I was like a typical annoying ass 18-year-old who was into cars, which means that like all you care about is horsepower and car reviews and 0-60 times. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing with this like shitty 140 horsepower like thing that you call a sports car? Like, why would anyone want that? So he invited me onto an autocross, and he put me in the car as a passenger. And I was like, I didn't know cars could do this. Like, I didn't know they could feel like this.
We talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
Talk about this all the time when, like, one of my favorite things is just bring new people to the track, right? And the phrase I always tell them is like, it's a very familiar setting for you in that it's the inside of a car.
Yeah.
But it's going to do things that you've never experienced before.
Yeah.
And your brain's going to be like, we're not going to make this corner. There's no way we're going to make this corner.
Yeah.
And it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then from there, it was pretty difficult. I started modifying my mom's car without telling her and autocrossing it.
Just trying to keep the hidden mods, right?
What was the first mod you did?
See, this is where he picked up all those skills and hiding all his pips for OTA. It's just as a history.
With the accusations right away.
The history of hiding mods.
Jesus.
Damn.
What did you change?
We'll go there. No, it was like, luckily I had good people around me. Like, it wasn't like a typical car enthusiast where like you go to a Tim Hortons car meet, and then you learn like the wrong way to modify a car, then you learn the right way to modify a car. It was like it was the right way from the get-go, because I knew autocross people, right? Like that was my intro to, like, I went to an autocross before I went to a car meet, you know?
That's so cool.
Yeah, so it was just like brakes and tires, and then eventually I did like springs and Coney yellows, and yeah, and then eventually I was like, I remember there was a turning point where I rode in my friend's 300ZX, and then I was like, oh, like that's what a sports car feels like the seating position, the way you like fall into it. And then I was like, screw this like Honda stuff. Sorry.
Wait, are you apologizing to me?
So like, I'm sure everyone's had.
I represent all of Honda.
Yeah.
I take that burden.
Yeah. And then I bought an MB Miata, and I was still pretty shitty wrench at that time, so I ruined it with a really, really bad engine swap. But that's also when I began driver mods. So I did a lot of content for that. I did a lot of content on Speed Academy, so that was cool. I got to meet Dave Pratt.
What did you do with them?
I documented the entire build.
You went over it very casually. He said he engine swapped a Miata.
Okay. I put a 2.4 liter Ecotec
GM baby
motor into a Miata. But I didn't have the skills. The shop that was helping me that's a long story, but it wasn't very well done.
Okay.
And it was one of those things where like every single time I took the car, it was broken. Like I think I drove like a total of 10,000 kilometers on that swap. And when I say swap, I mean like not that engine, because it went through more than one engine.
Okay.
But no, it was cool because I got to write some content, start driver mod, meet some people, do my first engine swap. But like by the time that was all over, I was so over modifying cars, because that was such a shit show, that I bought the FRS, and I was like, this thing's gonna stay stock. Like it's gonna be stocker than stock.
We're
forever.
As car people, we are so easy. Well, no, not easy. We are so good at deceiving ourselves at the onset of new car journeys. But okay, so one of the things you kind of glossed over, you said you were collaborating with Speed Academy on stuff. Like, were you writing?
Yeah, like I did a 13-part series on that engine swap. Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Very
it was cool. Yeah.
You got to blow up a few cars before, you get to a place where like, zen.
Yeah.
And that ends up just buying like a GT Porsche and just like, all right, do nothing.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll get there eventually.
Well, like, to that point though, I try to be nice when I see people modify cars really, really badly. Because I think that you have to ruin one car.
Yeah.
Like at least one car in your entire like car life, right? Is going to be a complete dumpster fire. And then hopefully you'll learn, or maybe you won't. And then you'll just buy a GT Porsche one day. But yeah, bought the FRS. I was like, this shit's going to remain stock. OTA. That was a whole adventure. Actually, honestly, the FRS did remain pretty stock. Like lots of suspension work, but the motor was really, really stock, short of like messing around with the EA5 at one point.
Where are you buying barrels from? You're just lugging around with
Oh God, bro. Buying barrels of running EA5 in Ontario is a fucking nightmare. So I would text a guy who's
hey, you got the goods?
He's a plug, man. You had a plug.
I should I can't even remember his name, but Giuliano hooked me up with a guy, and I would just
Just
text
in your
him.
contact
Yeah.
E85 guy. E guy.
Dude, yes, honestly, yes. And he'd show up at my house with a barrel of EA5, and I would put it in the corner of my garage.
Yeah. Did you get a heater for it? You wrap it, or you just hug it all winter long?
But see, it's that kind of shit that would scare me, because like, okay, you've got a barrel of EA5 in your garage, and then your house burns down. What are you going to tell your insurance company? Like, it's one thing to mess around with car
Get
insurance.
there.
Yeah. But yeah, EA5 was a nightmare in Ontario because I'd have to lug it. Like, I remember one time, I brought 110 liters of EA5 to Shannonville. So 3-hour drive there, right? And then
You
all it
just
takes,
apportion to the little jerry cans.
yeah, well, yeah, like I had like 5 20-liter cans and like 1 10-liter can, like all around the car.
Jesus.
And like all it takes is for one can to have a bad CO. And then the whole car just reeks of EA5. So by the time I got to the Airbnb, I was like crying, and the whole car reeked of EA5, which is why for the BRZ, I was like, I'm never doing this shit ever again.
Yeah. Enrique's been trying to convince me to go E on the swap build. I got the kit because it's like the Continental, ethanol. What are they called? The flex fuel kit.
Yeah.
I'll wire it in, but yeah, it's the same thing with the supercharger. I got the E85, the sensor, and just never ran it.
Yeah,
It's too hard to find.
I sold it after I bought it from you.
Like honestly, it's sick. Like I know you want to talk about the FA24 later, but like when I did that video with Jason, like there are all these people in the comments who were like, "Oh man, I made 200 horsepower on EA5." It's like, yeah, no shit, you're on EA5. The whole point of that build was to like not have to run EA5.
Yep.
Because getting it to my house wasn't even the hard part. It was just lugging it around to every single event. And then you have to like run the car dry on the way there, fill it with EA5, tune it at the track, get like some like time in the car in order to get the throttle position sensor to be happy again, run out of EA5, put pump gas back in, retune it on the way. Like the whole thing. Because the other thing is that I wasn't smart about it. I didn't run a flex fuel sensor. So yeah, that all sucked. Like I'm very jealous of everyone who lives in the States who can get EA5 easily.
Just everyone.
Yeah, because the FA20 feels great on EA5. Like you make 200 wheel, it's super peaky. It's awesome. Yeah.
It's just a thing that passed for you now. So never again, eh?
Never
say never?
Not in Ontario. It's just too much of a nightmare. Like
Sounds like a lifestyle, dude.
it is a lifestyle. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. If you got a trailer and an enclosed, lugging around a race car, what's a barrel
You got
or
like a
two?
hand pump or something.
Yeah, like that's a different story. Like if you've got an F-150 on a trailer, like, and you're listening to this, like maybe consider it, honestly, because you could just throw jerry cans in the back, and like sure, I was paying like $3 a liter, but everything about racing's fucking expensive. So.
Yeah, I mean that's not the thing that's gonna tip the scales.
Yeah. Like who really cares about that? Yeah, I think I might do it for a race car.
Yeah, for sure.
Somebody trying to get 200 wheel NA from an FA20, like you really don't have any other option.
Yeah,
for the cost.
Yeah.
NA, I don't. Yeah,
no
unless
way.
you go crazy with like the intake manifold and like.
Yeah, for the chance of making it too.
Yeah, can you even port anything on the FA head? I don't even know. Like I've never really taken a close look at it before, so just crazy stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I've looked into it, and like there's a company in the States called Element Tuning that plays around with porting and plays around with big valves. But I contacted them, and they were never able to get me like a real like number of like a horsepower bump for NA. And then like to me that sounds like you don't really do it for the power. You do it because you want to hit 8,000 or 9,000 RPM with an FA20, right?
Wicked.
Yeah.
Did you achieve your goals from doing the E85?
Oh, we never dynoed the car.
Or maybe not power goals,
but dyno
lap time goals.
fell fast.
Yeah, like I hit 193 at the back straight at Mosport with a full interior FRS.
Yeah, that's sick. And stock final drive?
No, 4.8.
4.8,
Yeah.
193.
Yeah, but like I was talking to Giuliano, not to throw shade. But I think
Throw shade, please.
I think
Please throw shade.
with his car on pump gas this summer, he told me he was hitting like 176.
Oof.
So it's like
Standing still.
It's like a real power bump when you when you go to EA5.
Yeah.
But yeah, never again for a street car. Never again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we get really deep into the first iteration of your FRS, I do want to talk about like one thing that you mentioned that you got your private pilot's license before your driver's license.
Yeah.
Right. So obviously you had a thing for things that go fast, some mechanical inclination to vehicles, right? But what made you kind of go deep in the car world as opposed to aviation?
Aviation, you're a really, really good pilot if you're really precise and procedural. But there's no room for cowboys in aviation, like going fast at all is like not a thing, right? It's all about safety. And in fact, anytime I flew with a pilot who was like remotely cowboy-esque, I was like, get the fuck away from me, you know? You're never pushing things when you're a pilot. It's all about getting there safely. And it was a lot of fun. But when it came to like figuring out like, okay, like where do I put my dollars, right? I just found driving faster on a racetrack so much more fun. And I spent a long time, like it's not like I like dabbled in aviation and then dropped out. Like I went all the way through. I got my commercial pilot's license. And then I was like, oh, I don't really like the idea of being a poor pilot, because when you're like a really low hour pilot, it's that first like leap into the airlines is really, really tough. It takes a long time. So yeah, I basically picked like aviation. I basically had to like pick between aviation and racing, and it was an easy pick because like racing is just so much more exciting and safer. I would argue it's a lot safer because I was in it for long enough that I saw 2 nasty crashes, and like with recreational aviation, there is no airbags. There's no like, oh, oops, you had a crash, right? It's like, no, like you die, right? So yeah, no, not to make it too dark, but sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, it's those things that push me over to racing cars. And hell, if I had like unlimited money, I'd probably still fly casually. But yeah, like racing is so much more, or I shouldn't say racing around you guys. Time attack is so much more exciting. And safer. Like I feel more comfortable with that life choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't judge, man. Time attack can be racing.
So he says that, but this guy has done enduro. He's done enduro. Did you know that?
You've done endurance racing?
Me? No, I haven't.
Haven't you?
No. That never happened. No.
Did you do enduro karts?
Didn't you drive for Junction one time?
No. Oh, okay. I know why you got that impression.
Oh, did somebody else write that article?
No, I know. I wrote the article, but I didn't
Got a
drive.
ghostwriter.
So like, okay. When I graduated college, like I think we can all relate to, I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. So that's when Driver Mod started. And like I actually
speak
thought
for yourself,
that,
man. Kidding.
I actually thought that like automotive journalism could be like a real career path, right? So like if you go to Driver Mod right now, you're going to find like build articles, and you're going to find like lifestyle articles. Like I went to an endurance race and then like did like the whole like journalism thing where I just kind of like hung out with them and documented that story. And like I did some auto show stuff. I did some car reviews. So then I realized that there's too many people who want to do that. So that's also a path to poverty. But no, that's how I ended up at Junction Endurance Race.
Everybody catching strays, dude.
Okay. So we just gotta get him into some wheel to wheel next year as well.
I've come so close. Like last year, you guys probably know this, but last year after the crash, I was talking to Vin about doing a stint with Numi, with you guys, at Calabogie. And like we were going back and forth, and I was on my sim at home, and I was just like turning laps, and I would just I couldn't like get outside of my own head, which I don't know. So I don't know. Maybe we should talk about the crash because I feel like that's like the
I feel we're jumping around.
Yeah.
But yes. Okay, let's get there. So okay, before the crash, let's talk about when you first got the FRS.
Right.
Okay. When you first got the FRS, were you the first owner, or did you buy used?
It was a lease takeover. So
Okay.
I got like a sweetheart deal, 15
Nice.
grand, 54,000 kilometers.
Oh, that's
Like
Wow.
the kind of shit that you never see these days.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's something that you knew that was
No,
returning.
No, it was just a dude on Kijiji. and
Damn.
and
Shout
somehow
out, dude, on Kijiji.
somehow we trusted each other enough where I just paid the dealer like his buyout, and
Yeah.
I cut him a check for $1,000, and I walked away with the car from Toyota.
Damn.
Nice.
Yeah, it was
Nice.
pretty good.
So how long from first day of ownership to taking to the track?
Like months,
Months?
like 3 months maybe.
Yeah.
Like I think I let myself get like an oil change in, then I took it to the track.
Yeah. You always knew you were going to take it to track.
Oh
though,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's
yeah.
why
Like,
you got it.
oh yeah, like 1,000%. Like the reason why I got it was because I saw guys like oh man, this was way back. But do you guys remember Stefan, CSCS guy? He had a black FRS. He used to,
Rings a
like
bell.
he used to do like 21s, and like that was like incredible back then.
Yeah.
And maybe even Adam at the time. This was 2018.
Yeah,
I
Adam did do CSCS.
Yeah. I think he named.
Yes.
Adam, we still have CSCS like safety stickers on the car.
That's so funny. That's so not his scene, but that's so funny.
He did.
We all got to try it at one point. I'm a big proponent of like go out and do everything. Like don't get stuck in like your one kind of.
Yeah.
Have you done
race.
CSCS, Jason?
No.
You have with your red car, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I gotta try
I'll
it.
do it when the car's done.
Yo, let's do
I'll
it.
show up.
Let's do it.
Yeah, you should do it. Yeah. So it was watching those guys like run this car really reliably and like turning like decently quick laps that got me into one. And it was like our only car at the time. I was winter driving it. Why would you do that? I don't know.
I'm still doing it.
Sorry, you said everyone was catching strays, so now I'm like intentionally taking shots.
Please.
Yeah, like it was a 2-door car that had a big back seat, so like you could actually use it to like do real life stuff, and it just made sense. Yeah,
For sure. Do you remember that first track day?
yeah. I think it was just like a quiet like October track day,
Yeah,
and like
TMP?
of course the MP. Yeah,
of course.
Just show up.
There's no other truck on the planet, right? And yeah, it was immediately great. It was like it's interesting going from a Miata to an 86 where like everyone talks about those two cars as being the same, just the FRS you can fit a wider tire, the FRS makes a bit more power, that kind of thing. But the FRS out of the box is so flat. Like I recently drove like a brand new ND, and I could not believe how much body roll those things have.
Yeah.
Like amazing cars,
A lot
but
of
it's
body
like you have to know it's coming. You have to know that the car is gonna like roll over on you.
Yeah, I've borrowed my friend's RF for a weekend, and the body roll is the one thing that I noticed. The other was the shifter feel was it's like it has good action. It was just too light. That's the thing that I would need to change on that, because it just felt like it was just
Logitech.
it just felt like exactly. It felt like a Logitech racing sim shifter, which is to say it had like the spring force of like a rubber band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Miatas too, like I loved my Miata, but then when I got the FRS, I was like, oh, like when people drive my Miata and they'd be like, oh, this feels like a toy car. This feels like I'm wearing a backpack. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? Because I drove that thing for a year. I just put like 60,000 kilometers on that Miata, winters, everything. But then the FRS, like it feels more like substantial, like a real like sports car.
Yeah. Especially when you put 245, 255s on it.
Yeah.
You feel the steering gets heavy. Like it's pretty legit.
Yeah. And then like every FRS fuckboy, it just became a matter of chasing time, right?
Yeah.
I then like a minute later, I felt like I had met God, what Yeah, okay. So I messed around with the FRS for a while in 2019. I took it down to Rural Atlanta. That was cool for grid life.
It's a bucket list track
Wow.
for me, man. I want to go so
Yeah,
bad.
but this is what I'm talking about. Like I want more people to do more series.
Yeah.
Like try everything you
Try
can.
everything.
And I don't know why more Canadians don't go down to grid life. Grid life is I've been a ton of times at this point, and it's such a party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just there's a mental barrier, I think, in crossing the border, and then also it's just a long drive, right? Because so you've been to Road Atlanta. Have you done other U.S. tracks?
He's done Watkins Glen.
Yeah.
Done Watkins, right?
Yeah, I've God, what have I done? Watkins Glen, Rural Atlanta, Gingerman Raceway from Grid Life Midwest.
Jeez,
I think that's it.
that was a festival, right?
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
sick.
I wanna do a
I've done
festival.
PPIR, Pikes Peak International
Jeez, I
Raceway.
remember you guys did that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you do those, okay, and we kind of talked about this a little bit on Scott's episode, because he drives his car
Yeah.
to every single event too, right? And at that level of preparation for that car, that always makes me feel a little bit nervous. Like, do you just, knock on wood, like you count yourself as a lucky guy that you're not gonna have a mechanical when you make those trips, or do you plan? Like you said, you're very methodical, right, with planning. Like, do you plan a contingency on how you're gonna get the car home?
No. the contingency is for one, I've never gone alone. Like every single grid life trip I've ever done has had at least one support car, right? Or just, multiple cars. And then I've got my toolbox, and like they're at this point, like I know my way around that car so well that like short of, even if we spun a rod bearing, I think we could fix it. We just have to find an FA20 and an engine waste. Like you guys were talking about like Adam doing transmission swaps. I did like 6 in the summer of 23 transmission swaps.
What?
So it's like whatever happens, we can fix it. you know?
Why?
Not just in your own
Why
car,
did you
right?
do 6?
That's a long story.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like that's the contingency, and I think that there's something. I think we all grew up on Top Gear. Like I think we all grew up on like watching those 3 old dudes like drive across the Sahara
Yes.
with like quote unquote just their cars, and then if anything happened, they had to fix it. And like that was my upbringing. So for me, it's like recreating that. Like you just go out with your boys in a race car with a toolbox of tools, and then whatever happens, you'll figure it out.
There's definitely something about that specific template or format of content. Like you look at YouTubers today, right? Like Gears and Gasoline, every couple of months they try to do like a road trip because they know that's where they're going to get a ton of views. And same with like Mighty Car Mods, always going back to Japan and do another like Temples and Turbos and whatnot, right? Like it's a lot more story driven. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And I think that's the lens that I've always looked at cars through, because like the moment I got really into cars, I began writing. Like do it for the plot, man. Like it's all about the story. Because no one really, like the trophy on your shelf is gonna look great, for that 1 year, and then 10 years later you're gonna be like, oh, like that thing, maybe I should put it in a box somewhere. But it's the stories that you're really gonna like cherish and pass down and like appreciate in the long run, I think.
That's so
100%.
cool.
100%.
Yeah. And that's kind of been like the through line, right? So like 2019 was just messing around with the car, getting some of the car, Rural Atlanta. And then I got back from Rural Atlanta, and then I was at Shannon Track Day. And that's where I met Daniel Kokar, the dude who used to own my BRZ. I think we did the whole like Rise Spec thing with Richard the next year. And then we thought we were hot shit in 2020, but that was just because no one showed up because COVID. So we did well, OTA, and then 21, 22. Yeah, just slowly modding the car, like a lot of messing around with suspension. I tried KW coilovers, they blew up. Tried like
It's just leaked.
Yeah. On our test day, pull into the pits, and the tip of one of my front dampers was just missing, and there's shock oil all over the engine block.
Were they new, or did you?
No, they're
Facebook
used.
Marketplace
Yeah,
special.
It was Facebook Marketplace.
I mean, that's why.
Yeah, no, no, legit though. Like no dig on KW. It was just shitty luck, and that was the last time I've ever bought used coilovers.
Yeah, KW V3s were. I mean, I bet like there are sets in Ontario that have probably gone through like 7 owners or something like that. Because that was like, when you wanted like fancy coilovers to slam your car, that's what most people went with. And probably part of the reason is it loses stroke when you lower. Right. It doesn't have independent height adjustment. So if it was on like a slammed car and then you got your hands on it,
but also like maintenance, like most people take coilover maintenance for granted, right? That's because most coilovers you can't really rebuild them. Like KWs, like sure you can rebuild them, but you're shipping them to Germany, and then by the time you do that, then pay for the rebuild, you may as well buy a new set.
Yep.
So most people just forget that that's even a thing, and then just like run these shocks indefinitely, and then sure enough they blow up one day. And it's only when you go to like the really high end stuff like Tractive or MCS or Moton that like they actually become easily rebuildable by like local rebuilders, right? And that's the thing that like people never think about when they're shopping for coilovers. Arguably because like you can't even afford to think about it half the time because the floor at that point is like $5,000, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think there's a lot that people don't really understand about coilovers. Like we could have like a whole series just discussing like figuring out spring rates, figuring out droop, figuring like matching the spring rates to the valving. And a lot of people think about just, I'm going to get JRZs or MCS and whatnot. And those things are built with a very short rebuild cycle in mind. They don't have dust boots. Whereas like some people put them on the car and just expect them to last forever, right? And so like even Öhlins DFVs, right? Which are pretty, like that's like entry level for Öhlins. If you look at the manual and it tells you what the rebuild cycle is, they say 10 hours on track. Who's doing that? Who's doing that? No one's doing that. No one's doing that.
Yeah. And then like to add insult to injury, like when you buy JRZs or Motons, like they're usually intended to be bought by a race shop that can set them up properly, not just like throw onto a car, then you run the car, then you expect them to work. Which is why like a lot of people who buy high-end shocks, like they're like, why doesn't this shit work? It's because you don't spend like 10 hours like messing with ride height or nitrogen charges or like spring rates, Hopper springs, whatever, right? That's why I'm such a big fan of you guys know Zetas by 949 Racing? Like
only because you keep talking about them.
Well, like they took a Mosport damper and paired it with the right spring, and then did all the setup work for you, and they just hand you this like Mosport package that they've like run on US tracks on that chassis, dominating time attack for like 4 years, and they just take all of the guesswork out of it.
Yeah, the R&D is people don't like to think about paying for R&D because it's not a material thing.
Yeah.
Right. But that's just going to save you a ton of time and actually give you real performance, right? Like this is a thing that we also used to joke around with like Chump Car or Champ Car as it's called now, like that the teams with a lot of money, what they would do is they would have custom non-adjustable dampers and cycle through like 20 different sets to find the perfect rates, right? And then they're like, yeah, man, non-adjustable dampers,
Yeah.
No additional points.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we're showing up, with our Honda Fit and like, just throw whatever fits in there, right? Like, but that's it, right? Like when people are very attracted to like on paper, it has 36 ways of adjustment. Like, what does that mean? It might just be more granular, but the range might be pretty bad, or just the range is actually in a non-working part of the spectrum for your car setup or something like that. So
it took me a long time to learn that lesson. Like the KWs, bought them used, they blew up. I spent $3,200 on BC Racing coilovers because I know. Every time I tell people that, they're like, "The fuck is wrong with you?"
Those were on sale for so long. You try to get rid of those. I remember those for like a year, dude.
Yeah, and then I ended up like selling them for $1,500, and even that felt like a lot because they were just garbage. But yeah, like they're external reservoir, double adjustable. Like they were like,
I guess we're never gonna get BC Racing as a sponsor for this podcast.
Well, I mean,
it's okay.
I wasn't gonna recommend them to anybody either. So
it's more for the drift crowd.
But like it's what you were talking about. Where like it's one thing to take a coilover then build it to a spec sheet, right? And make those specs sound really, really good. But if you don't actually put them on a chassis and then test them with like significant time, it's probably going to suck. Because that was the issue with my BCs. Like functionally they were fine, but the rear shocks are way too short. So I would come around like T3 at TMP and the inside rear would just lift.
Yeah.
Either then the car would just bog the whole way through, either then the lap would be finished. Like that was it, right?
Dang.
And I was like in car road like shit. Also because it was way too stiff, but that was a decision on my part. That was poor.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were garbage. So like I had Zetas on my Miata, so I knew about 949 racing for a long time, and I was watching them. Like actually, part of the reason why I bought a twin was because at the time when I bought my twin, they were developing diapers for them. And like all like really innovative companies, great product, not great communication. So like they were saying that they're coming soon since like 2018. So it was like 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. By that point, I just thought that they were like vaporware because they had been saying that they're coming soon for like 3 years. And then I was emailing them over the winter of 21. And then they got back to me like right before my birthday. And they were like, all right, we're actually going to put these on sale. So I dropped like almost $5,000 on them.
Dang.
As an early birthday present. And I got like part number like 001.
Wow.
Which felt like a real gamble because you buy the first
since
set.
you don't want 001.
Yeah. But they've been awesome. Like they've probably been like the best part I've ever bought.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like they went on for the 22 season, and the 22 season was like my sweep. Like that was like my like Goldilocks season where like I either won every event, or when I lost, I was just like still super happy about that. Yeah.
Did the two of you guys ever overlap in competition?
No, because I finished OTA in 2020.
Okay.
So I think, were you in the lower class at that point? You were in
Yeah,
GT3?
definitely. Yeah. Oh,
Or sorry, no, you were in GT4.
Yeah,
Kokar and I were in GT3.
Yeah.
Yes. But then your car was still like fairly stock.
Oh yeah, like it was stock. Like it was 17x9s and like camber bolts. Yeah. And that was it.
So 22 season was the hot season.
Yeah.
What was your most memorable lap from that year?
The 36.4 that I did around Mosport. Then I got back to the pits and I realized I forgot my transponder.
No.
Because me and
you're gonna remember that.
because me and Powell were double stinting my car. Because Giuliano's car was having some issues and Powell was like, I'm not touching that. So I'm gonna get fucking flamed for this podcast. But yeah, so me and Powell.
That's when you know it's good.
Me and Powell were double stinting my car, so we were constantly switching the transponders. And then like I forgot to put mine back on for the final stint.
Oh.
And I still got like a 36.6 on the record. But yeah, it's always shitty when your PB doesn't get counted. And also like 36, like I think that's still pretty fast for an FRS street car.
Full weight, dude.
Yeah.
Like everything. Yeah, dude, that is fast.
Yeah, like
that is fast.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that I don't know of another Gen 1 street car that's been that fast. So I'm still pretty proud of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think a Gen 1 street car is, not that I've heard of.
I know one.
Really?
Who did a 35 full weight.
What?
No way.
It was this, I forgot his name. I think his name is Dominic. He had like a Klebe front end.
Okay.
It was full street car, full weight with Voltex Type 7. Did a 35.
With a pretty big wing too. Wow.
Yeah.
God damn. All right.
A 7.
Did a 35. And then he crashed the same day.
Like the wing that I have.
Yeah. The big swan neck one. I believe that's the same wing he had.
Jesus.
Ran a 35.
Yeah.
That is mind-boggling with that big of a wing.
Yeah.
I got
The Bat Stig also did a 35. Dave. He did a 35. He's got
Jeez, man.
Varus front end.
Phil's having a really bad night.
He's got the he's got the same wing as he's got the 9 lives.
Yeah, 9 lives.
So you guys both don't have good taste in aesthetically pleasing wings.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of those brackets. I'll be honest.
It works.
Yeah.
It works. The whole thing is that it works, and that's cool. I respect it.
So you know Safo, we've a mutual friend.
Yeah.
And he's constantly giving me shit for my car.
Oh, he also gave you shit to me. He's like, Phil doesn't know about swag, man.
So okay. I'm gonna make a case here though that it's culture, right? Like my car is like like I grew up watching Grid Life, right?
Yeah.
So my car is what you would build if you grew up watching Grid Life. I didn't grow up watching Time Attack, Japanese Time Attack like the rest of y'all. And that's why you're all like hot and horny for Voltex and carbon fiber and shit. And I'm like, why would you waste your money on that when a spray painted black plywood splitter and a Nine Lives Racing wing is just as fast? Like, you're all idiots.
Look cool is fun. Look cool is so fun.
Yeah, but no, like it just comes out. I genuinely think it comes down to like what you grew up with.
Yeah.
And I grew up with like Grid Life Time Attack.
No matter what, the lap time is the defining factor. So it doesn't matter if you go fast. The car does what you need it to.
Say that, but I don't believe you.
I wouldn't execute in that fashion.
Oh, okay.
I will try to get a lap time in a different fashion.
Like I didn't buy the Nine Lives Racing wing despite the looks. I bought it partly because of the looks, because I was like, that shit's rad.
Yeah.
Because like again, like American Time Attack, like watching Club TR and watching
it is raw.
GLTC. Yeah.
It is, and that is their brand.
Yeah.
As Nine Lives goes, right?
Yeah.
Like they don't care. It's pure function.
Yeah, and there's something fucking cool about like a wing company that just like the dude just quit his job one day and then like found like a storage facility and then just began making like budget wings. Like I think that story is really, really cool. And however, I want an excuse to run their wing because I think they're like a really cool company.
Dang. Now I feel bad for not getting behind that because that's like garage built like business. That's
I'm like
so cool.
I'm all about those like little American companies. Like 949 Racing is another like small American company.
But they've made high end stuff for Miata for so long, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I don't own a Miata, but even I know about 949.
Yeah, 6 UOs and
Yeah, the wheels.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people run that wheel.
yeah.
Even in the 86 community. They
Really?
made a 86 spec.
They did. Yeah, they did.
Oh, I think Steven runs those wheels.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Cool.
They've got a mixed reputation.
Oh yeah.
as a wheel manufacturer?
No, I those wheels. Certain generations have had a history of cracking.
It's okay, man. We run RPF ones, man. Come on.
Well, no, like honestly though, like that's why I've never really considered them because like they've. By the way, I love 949 Racing. Their Zeta is fucking fantastic, but like certain generations of 6 UOs have cracked, and then they've gone back and they've been like, "Well, wheels are consumable," and then it becomes like a whole like shit fest on the internet with like, "What side are you on?" And I just wanted to stay out of all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's racing. The whole car is consumable. End of the day.
Yeah.
Actually, that is foreshadowing.
Speaking of which. All right. So, at the risk of triggering some PTSD,
I'm so sorry, Phil.
let's talk about. Do you remember the date? Do you remember the date?
Oh man, it was Canada. Yeah, it was Canada.
Canada Day long weekend.
Yeah. Canada Day long weekend, 23. Yeah.
23.
Yeah.
All right, walk us through that day.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you had for breakfast that day?
Okay. So I think the way to tell the story is to start with the weekend prior. Like I was getting like really fucking confident in that car. Like Watkins Glen, I did that the same year. It was a pouring wet track day. Like it was the wettest track day I've ever been in. Right
At Watkins.
In general, like
Period.
like it was like a flood. Like I shit you not, Grid Life. Hopefully they're not listening. Like they should have shut that event down because it got so dangerous because so many cars were crashing. Like I think 10 cars wrecked that weekend. Damn. Like if I was running a track day,
10 cars at a time attack event is.
Yeah. Like if I was running a track day, but sorry, by the way, this was HPD. It wasn't a time attack.
Oh,
event.
no competition.
So there was competition Friday, Saturday. But I couldn't buy a time attack ticket because buying a Grid Life time attack ticket these days is really, really tough. So it was an HPD day, and every single session a car was getting written off, and it was like,
damn,
these were like beginner sessions too. So like imagine like your first ever track day, you sign up for HPD, you've got your instructor, you arrive your car, like that's terrible. But
hard to come back from that.
Yeah.
When it's your first day.
Yeah, so like cars were like getting written off like every single session. And my car felt so stable. I was like finding the grip. I was looking for like the matte patches. I felt like a real like wet racing driver. And like wet driving in the rain's been like a thing that I've had trouble with. So I was finally like getting a groove. The weekend before the crash, I was again at a speed therapy lapping day, instructing, and I was instructing a guy with a Lamborghini Huracan. And
this is at Mosport GP.
it was a Mosport GP. And I remember when I began instructing, I was talking to Val because he's instructed for a long time. You guys know Val, EG Civic, shit ton of other cars, amazing driver, Piddle dude.
Legend.
I'm only saying that because, you know, this is a podcast, but legend, right? And when I...
You wouldn't tell that to him to his face?
I tell it to him all the time. I love that, man.
No, that was incredible. But like when I began instructing, he was like, yeah, like I don't want to instruct in fast cars. And I was like, why? Like that's sick. And he's like, no, like I want to instruct in Miatas and Civics and like shitboxes. I do not want to instruct in fast cars. And I realized really quickly it's because like the car is so capable. And then things will happen really quickly.
Yeah.
And then they've got really advanced traction and stability control systems. But then the student doesn't really know how to work with them.
Yeah.
So like it began raining. I'm in this Lamborghini. And like the car would begin understeering. So he'd slam on the brakes. And then it'd begin like oversteering because all the weight shifted forward. And then he'd like get back in power. Then like it would just kind of, it was like he was fighting all the interventions all the time. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to fucking die in this car. So I put him in my FRS and I was like I want to show you that like understeer doesn't have to be scary. Oversteer doesn't have to be scary. You don't have to like freak out and react to it. So like we went out and like I would let the car push and I'd be like, see, I'm not doing anything. I'm just riding through it. Or like I would let the car oversteer, then I would just stay on throttle and like ride through it. And it was again like a wet day. And I was like, man, like I'm getting really comfortable at a track that scared the crap out of me, you know, 3 years ago. I then go to the day of Mosport GP weekend. First off, I had 2 students. So I was like jumping from car A to car B, taking notes, like giving them pointers. And then I would hop into my car, then I would try and find some pace. Because this was like the practice day before competition. And like I mentioned before, 22 was like the Goldilocks year. 23 was when the competition really began to heat up. I stopped running EA5. I now began running the wing. I wasn't entirely sure that I needed the wing. So I was still kind of playing with like whether or not it actually created pace or not. So I did like 2 sessions with the wing. I think I got into like the 37s, which I was disappointed by. With no EA5. I wanted to try again to the 36s with no EA5. So I was like, let me try taking the wing off in order to reduce drag. Because I wasn't entirely convinced that it was helping. And then in that same session where I took the wing off, I put my friend, my co-cozer in the passenger seat. And I was like, hey, come off for a ride because we were going to be double stinting my car during comp. So I wanted him to like get some exposure to it. And yeah, it was... like I did my 1 warm-up lap and I was like, the car feels great. And I was on fresh AO52s. And then I went for like a 1 hot lap and I took turn 4 the same way I took turn 4 the previous session, which was like just flat, attack it, stay in it. And the rear stepped out at like 180 and the right side of the car went to the grass. I was like, well, I can't stomp on the brakes in the grass because I'll spin the car. Fought to get the car back onto asphalt, slammed on the brakes. By that point, it was too late. Took the right hander, but like just the car slid out onto the gravel, sideways into the wall. Yeah, and it was so fucking scary. And it's weird because like I was like, how do I tell this story in front of Patrick? Because like crashing cars in a racing series is not weird. Like that's like a thing that happens, right? But it was really fucking scary. And like it happened it took so long to happen. Like the car stepped out and I was like, oh shit, this is gonna be bad. And I swear it took like 10 seconds to actually hit the wall.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't matter if you do like endurance racing or not. That sucks, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. And then like I just like stepped out of this like crumpled car. Yeah, I was like, I don't really know how to feel. Like part of me was like, I just want to like fucking lie on the ground and cry. I think that other part was like, no, like I want to like figure out what to do next. I want to like, do I buy another chassis? What do I like, you know, like the part of your brain that begins planning.
Well, obviously this happened after you got off the track, right? You weren't just like already planning. Still, like, did you kind of skipped over the part where the marshals get out there, check over you guys, take you back to the paddock.
Yeah. So like, there's like fucking dust everywhere. The airbags went off. Kosher was checking on me. I was checking on Kosher. Went to the ambulance. I was like, I think I'm okay. Kosher seemed like he was in a lot of pain. He was the first one who was actually like, hey, I think we should go to the hospital. God bless him, because I was like, oh, let me just go for like moral support. We go to the hospital. They look over him. They're like, oh, he's got just like a bruised sternum. And then I was like, oh, I may as well get checked out too. And then that's when I realized I had a cracked rib. So I was like, cool, I'm glad I got checked out.
Oh, I remember this. Cracked rib.
Well, because like you're so wired and hyped on adrenaline. And then like trying to figure out like what to do with the car, and like I started like trying to figure it out really, really quickly, right? But then when I realized I had a cracked rib, that kind of gave me an excuse to like calm the fuck down. Yeah. Because I was like, all right, I can't drive
a reality check real quick.
Yeah, because I was like, I can't drive a car for like 2 months anyway. So the season's done. So I may as well like just take a breath and figure out life, Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then just came like the realities of like, okay, tow truck, get it home, tried to CA it. And they were like, well, we need an accident report. And I was like, well, that's not a thing. So eventually found like a friend of a friend, paid him some cash, got it back to Hamilton. I quickly realized that the car was totaled because your buddy Nick, so I was borrowing Alan's transmission for that weekend because my transmission was still having issues. So Nick had to come by because I couldn't take it out myself because, again, broken rib, painkillers, all that fun stuff. So Nick had to come by and in my garage drop the transmission out of the car. And I was pretty sure that it was totaled because the entire side of the car was smushed. But when Nick took the transmission out, all the transmission mount bolts were stretched. So like the whole tunnel kind of, did that, like it crumpled in. And then later I went to go, I really should have checked this ahead of time, but later I went to go put my old transmission mount in the BRZ that I bought. And then that was like all bent to shit. So like the whole chassis was like smushed. Yeah. So I quickly kind of gave up on that chassis and just started stripping it.
You shouted out some of your safety systems. Can you go into what you were equipped with at the time of the crash and what contributed to your safety?
Yeah. So 23 was also the year that I got serious about safety because, like I said, 22, 36s around GP. Like at that point, you're playing with fire. So half cage, Hans, 6-point harness. I've always had a Recaro in the car, but obviously a Recaro Profi. And yeah, like that's why big sideways impact. The only thing that was hurt was my broken rib because I didn't realize because you've got no crumple zone inside the car, right? I didn't realize how hard your body would get smushed into the side of the seat, hard enough to break your rib. But everything else, like my neck and everything was fine. I wasn't even sore in terms of like my neck. Thanks to all of that.
Yeah. Head and neck restraints, man.
Yeah. So if you're gonna try to go faster on Mosport, buy that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, with the side impact, I'd imagine most of that just like the curtain airbag came down in time, right?
Yeah, but like the funny thing, like I've always been a big proponent of like leave airbags in your street driven drag car because you could easily get in an accident not on the track and you're gonna want them, or like your passenger, right? But when you're in a 6-point harness and a head and neck restraint, the airbags just kind of go off like around you and they never hit you, and you're like, oh, that's cool.
That's interesting.
Did you get burnt?
Kosher got burnt.
I heard he got burnt.
Yeah, because he was in, and I still haven't quite made up my mind about this, because he was in like a stock seat, stock belt, stock everything, right? And my like philosophy when it comes to safety has always been either do everything or do nothing, right? Because it's a system. Because the stock seat is made to work with a 3-point. 3-point is made to work with your airbag system because it creates enough give for you to go into the airbag. But then when you put a bucket seat, I don't know if I fully buy this because I've run a bucket seat with a 3-point for a long time, but people say that like, oh, if you have a rollover, then the roof comes down, like you can't your body can't twist the other way because you're too fixed in position. That's like, I'm not totally sold on that. But like once you begin throwing a harness in, now you're like locking your body into place. And then if you don't have a Hans, then your neck's just like free to get fucked. So yeah, like I left the passenger side like completely stock because at the time I didn't want to invest in like, well, I shouldn't say at the time. I'm still a cheap ass. I want to invest in like a full seat 6-point Hans for the passenger side.
But you still need to solve the airbag problem.
Yeah,
in
so
these cars in particular.
Yeah, so he went forward and he got hit with the airbag and it burnt him. And like maybe that was the best outcome. Maybe getting hit with an airbag and getting burned is better than not getting hit with an airbag.
I mean, getting burned by an airbag will happen on the street.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just a derivative of that safety device, right? It can't really be helped. So that's all.
Yeah,
it's gunpowder. So
yeah,
what are you gonna do?
I think when I built my BRZ, I spent a lot of time getting the airbag system in that car to work because I was like, well, if I'm going to street drive this car and I'm going to put my wife in this car, I want working airbags because it's better than not having them, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that was my worst card.
Yeah. I mean, you're saying like comparing racing. I mean, time attack is racing. Like, period, right?
Sure.
I will say, having done a couple of seasons of endurance racing, I've never driven in endurance racing as hard as I did doing time attack.
Right. Yeah.
And I've never been more nervous in endurance racing than I have been in time attack. It's like when you're doing time attack, you oftentimes when you're really pushing it, I find you don't actually know if the car can do what you want it to do at the limit. When you're trying to find new time, you're experimenting. You're like, oh, what if I, don't lift here? What if, no, but seriously, right? But in endurance racing, you wouldn't do it. No, it's like, okay, what do I know in my mental model of how this car drives that is 100% repeatable at like 80% mental capacity or something like that.
You can test incrementally.
And you can test incrementally, or like you just don't push it because you're thinking like, I got to do this for 2 hours. Okay. Like what can I do? Right.
Yeah.
It's not as stressful as in time attack. But I guess what makes your situation pretty interesting is I think everybody who's done lapping for a while knows like there are some days where you're just in the flow. Right. And you're like, everything's perfect. I'm nailing everything. I feel at one with the car. And it's like, you're talking about your build up to that day where it's just been like confidence boost after confidence boost. And you're in that state. It must be a huge shock for when the rear steps out and you weren't expecting it to happen. You're just like, whoa, what's going on? Right. Like that. It wasn't as like to expectation.
Yeah. Yeah. And like so many, like in the preceding month, like so many thoughts went through my mind. Like the most persistent one was like, I put the half cage in the 6-point on the Hans because I knew that this could happen. I knew that we were all playing with fire. And I knew that we were all playing with fire. Like all the GP racing guys, like we knew that we were like really, really pushing the limit in terms of like what that chassis as a street car can do. So I knew that this could happen. But then when it actually happened, I think you're looking at like this wreck of a car and you're like, fuck, I really liked that car.
Yeah.
That was a good car. It was a good car to me. It was reliable. It was a faithful companion on all these crazy road trips. And I really felt like I took that for granted by like acting like it was disposable because we were at the point where we were driving like racing drivers. Like we were driving like, oh, I can drive this car tomorrow and it could still be worth it because I win that one event, right? Because we were trying to catch up to Jason and team.
I was on the team.
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
You, yeah. Well, you guys were the real competition that came in and challenged us. Because the year before, it was like, oh, the year before, when they created the team championship, we already had a team. We've been operating like a team for years. So we kind of already had this like well-oiled machine. And then I feel like it took a year for everybody else to catch up. And then everybody else caught up and we're like, oh shit, now we've got real competition. And yeah, like I went into that weekend being like, I will give this my all in order to like try to win that event. And then after I was like, plastic trophies? That was kind of dumb, you know? But then like also I'm fully cognizant of the fact that
it was never about the trophies.
Yeah.
it's all personal, desire and ambition.
And like that is time attack, and time attack's a beautiful thing and it's really heartbreaking and really punishing sometimes. But that's what the sport is about. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to get your thoughts on is when incidents like this happens at the track, right? And you've already mentioned that like when you go to the track, it's never like a solo experience, which I think is extremely mature, but I think also very necessary at the level that we were doing it. Just as you said, like if you go to a faraway track, you need people to help you put the car back together or get you home, or just for that moral support, right? But how do you think that we should, like, how do we best support people who have an incident on track day of it in the moment, when they get back, right? Because I'm sure you probably heard like 20 different people tell you, oh, cars are replaceable. Is that a helpful statement?
Yeah. I think, and at the risk of like getting overly like philosophical, like us men have this habit of being very much like, all right, what's next? How do I fix this? What's the plan? Like being really pragmatic, right? And I think the one thing that I would say is like, give yourself time to mourn, because we all go, oh, cars are replaceable and it's great that you're okay and blah, blah, blah. But like, no, like it fucking sucks. Because none of us are Lewis Hamilton. None of us have like a second chassis like waiting to go. That's time and money and sweat and like effort and experience that you expended to build that thing. And it really sucks. So like give yourself like time to mourn. And yeah, just go easy on yourself. Like everybody's in a rush to like get back on the track because you don't want to let that fear just stick with you and make your return like really, really hard. And that's all true and valid. But you also have to like be ready for it yourself. And I don't know if we were recording, but I mentioned before that like I briefly, like I was talking to Vin about doing Calabogie with you guys after the crash, like endurance racing. But then like I did a bunch of sim racing and I was like, I'm not there. Like I'm not in the right headspace to get back into a race car. So the BRZ, that project ended up being like it wasn't like, oh, I want to go and fucking patch holes in BRZ for fun. Like that's the best way to spend my summer. It was more like I really wanted to do another project because my Miata was such a dumpster fire. I wanted like a what's it called? Like a retribution?
A little redemption build?
Yeah, like a redemption build. Yeah, because my Miata was just poorly built. And I've learned a lot since then. So I kind of wanted like a really big build. But it also gave me an excuse to like take the time that I needed because, well, when you're building a car, no one's going to bug you about going to the track because you're like always building his car. And also like cracked rib season was done, had a whole winter. I was like, why not go big and just do like a full ground up rebuild?
Yeah. Before we dive into talking about the rebuild journey, because I think this is kind of getting to the new content, right? Like all the things that your past experience and the road that taking you to this point, you're kind of investing all the skills that you've learned, the new capabilities, as well as kind of like the philosophy of what you want to get out of this new build as well, right? And talking about how you've done the Miata, you've done a couple of iterations of your previous FRS. I do want to ask you, related to kind of getting back on the horse, so to speak, and just kind of processing the crash. What was the interaction like with the people that were closest to you? Like, what were the reactions like from your significant other or your family members?
It's funny because my wife has never thought of what I do as a dangerous thing. Like I've taken her out to TMP. She's like, oh, this is fun. I took her out to GP. I like slid the car through turn 2 and I was like shitting myself. And she was like, oh, that was fun. Like
like trust.
A lot of trust, but I don't think she realized that the sport was dangerous. And I remember the first time she ever told me like, be safe was that weekend. And she was like kind of kicking herself later because she was like, fuck, that was one time I told you to be careful. I think the people around me have enough faith in how I approach things to have been comfortable with me getting back into it. Because like I said, pretty big crash. I was fairly unscathed because I took the right precautions when it comes to safety, and that builds trust among the people around you. And I also knew that I wasn't going to go back to time attack, at least not for a while. Both because of like life getting in the way, but then also because I didn't like the way, this is going to get into the BRZ stuff, but I didn't like the way OTA made me build my car. And I kind of wanted to get away from that pressure. Like the pressure to like, okay, I show up, I have to perform, everything's on the line, this is really serious, and just kind of go off and like rip laps. But then like me being like, hey, I'm not going to do time attack kind of like brought the tension down a little bit, I think too. Yeah. I don't even know if I answered your question.
No, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah. So you feel that let's say, does your wife still support your endeavors after the winter that you just went through and occupying all the space at home with all the parts everywhere? Did she know what was about to happen when you made up your mind in terms of the direction for the next car?
Yeah, I know. I hopefully she'd agree, but I think we have really good communication when it comes to this kind of stuff. Yeah. Because I try really hard to maintain balance. So while like it might look like on IG that I was just wrenching on it 24/7, like no, like that wasn't the case. Like the engine build was nice because it was a lot of like hurry up and wait. It was like, okay, I'd like figure something out. I then have to wait for parts or wait for, I don't know, like to go to the machine shop. I then like life could go back to normal. Yeah. And wrenching, like a big project, I think is easier on, this might be controversial, but I think wrenching on a big project is easier on your relationship than like a time attack season. Because when you're wrenching, you're like, okay, I'm going to do 2 hours tonight. And then she's going to go take a bath. Yeah. And then, you know, you can hang out the next night. But then like when you're doing a season, it's like, okay, I'm out for the weekend. Like if you need me, like too bad, I'm gone. So in a weird way, I almost think it was easier for me to do the whole project car thing than to do time attack because I was still there, you know? Like the only days that were like really, really hard where I was like literally gone the whole time was when I was painting that chassis.
Because you just got to get it done.
Yeah, well, you know, you got to get it done. You got to get it all done in one day because of how paint dries, right? But yeah, I actually think in a weird way, I think the project car thing was actually better for my marriage than season after season after season of time attack.
I don't want you to. I really want to stop you from glancing over painting the car because, but can you paint the picture of how that car started when you got it to what you did at your own home to make it what it is now?
Yeah, so I'm really stupid. So like I really, really tried to not be married to the BRZ and the FRS. Like I really tried to keep an open mind and be like, I should try something different, right? And I say that because I think that like everybody acts like their build is very like methodical and very intentional. But in reality, it's often just like circumstance. Like y'all were talking about talking to Scott Chadbolt, and like the way his car ended up SMG, like it just happened to be an SMG car. Like I was even open to like building like an FD. Like I thought building an FD would be sick, or an S2000. But then when I mentioned Daniel Kokar before as a bit of foreshadowing, when his car showed up for sale in Jover's lot, I was like, I gotta save that car. Because it had such a rough life. Like so I've tried to paint a picture. For those who don't know, like the front end was cut up, like it had a wide body, like an eBay wide body. And there was a hole in one rocker. The rear bumper was cut. It was on its fourth motor, which was knocking. So like it was in a really like sad state. But I had so many parts. I was basically like, hey, I can probably replace anything because I had an entire FRS worth of parts. So yeah, I hauled it back to my place. I started off by just replacing every bit of suspension and like putting a handbrake in it because it was a drift car. Mainly because I need to get it like moving. Like I need to build.
You didn't want to leave the hydraulic in there, just when you're rounding turn 2 and just rip.
So I'm not as neurotic as like a guy like Scott, but like, man, like having a sawzall hole into your center console, like that is not for me. Like maybe if you could do it in a way that was like super clean and integrated, but yeah, I want it to be like really OEM. I'm also like a big like OEM plus guy. Yeah, so I did all the suspension work was first, all the interior work was first. I did that while I started the engine build. But like I said before, the engine build was not straightforward because I had to like figure out. So I guess it's time for that story, right?
Let's do it.
So Jay, your buddy Jay with the M2, blew up his BRZ, right?
Mm-hmm.
This was ages ago. And then MTech just had their block like at their shop. And then Giuliano was like, "Oh, we should do like an FA24 hybrid. That'd be sick." Then Giuliano eventually was like, "Oh, I don't really feel like it anymore. Do you want to buy it?" So the block was like super cheap. It was like $1,600, but it had a spun rod bearing. So I was like, the upfront cost is so low that I may as well try to figure something out, because I had like all these FRS parts. I had a FA20 with rod knock. I had this FA24 block now. I may as well try and figure it out. So I just started like putting stuff next to each other. And it's funny because everyone acts like it was like a big thing, because the write-up that I did got a lot of attention. Jay's video on the car got a lot of attention. But it was just bolting FA20 heads to an FA24 block, and then making it work. And the big question everyone has is like, well, why didn't you just like drop an FA24 in the car? And it's because I wanted it to be as OEM as possible. So being as OEM as possible means all OEM sensors, OEM wiring harness, OEM ECU, OEM dash, everything OEM. Because I'm not a wiring guy, I'm not a tuning guy. I want it to be like really, really factory. And the way you do that is by using off factory sensors. But if you want to use off factory sensors, then you kind of end up with like this sequence where like, okay, well, there's a lot of sensors on the front cover. If I want to use this factory front cover, I have to use the factory heads. There's also a lot of sensors in the factory heads. If I want to make all that work, I have to use the factory upper oil pan, because only the FA24 upper oil pan will mate to an FA24 front cover. I'm getting this all wrong. Only an FA20 upper oil pan will mate to an FA20 front cover. And the next thing you know, like it basically has to be all FA20 except for the block.
Yep.
So you machine the heads in order to make them fit on the FA24 block. Then you have to do some machining to make the reluctor wheel fit on the back. But it all, like after you figure that out, it all just kind of bolts together like a factory motor. It's easy for me to say that now that I know though, but like at the time it was like a lot of anxiety. We're like, okay, what if I got the clearance wrong and like the pistons hit the heads, or what if I get the compression ratio like way out of whack and this car makes like, what if it makes like 150 horsepower because the compression ratio is on the floor, or maybe the compression ratio is so high that I can't even run it on pump gas. So it was a lot of like measuring and math and trying to make sure that like things will actually work the way I expected to. But like now that there's been a few write-ups on the internet, it really is just machine the heads, bolt them onto an FA24, figure out the reluctor wheel. There's now a kit online. That way you don't have to machine the block to make the FA20 reluctor wheel fit, and send it. And like it was the goal was achieved because I dropped the motor into the car and I started it, and that was it. Like it just started like a factory. Sick. Yeah, like factory, it just started. And that was the entire goal, right?
Yeah.
And then I just got SAC from CSG to tune it like a factory FA20. And it's honestly been easier than I thought it would be, which is a pretty rare thing to say for a project car.
Yeah.
Yeah, once I got the car running, then came the issue of like all the body work. So like I bought, again, I'm very much like OEM plus. Like I bought brand new factory fenders. I got factory front bumper. I had my factory rear bumper from the FRS because it was mostly unscathed. But then like the chassis need all this body work. Like there was a, you guys know when you see like a rust bubble and you're like, I wonder if that's just like paint flaking or if it's really, really bad.
No, it's cancer.
Well, there was a rust bubble on the rear quarter of the car. And I was like, oh, it's probably just like surface level, right? And then it's like that classic story where like you take off the first layer and then just like a hole. So then you start cutting and it's like more rust and more rust and more rust. And you're like, fuck, how is this 9-year-old car so rotten? So I ended up like doing learning like a full, like I basically taught myself bodywork. And I did like a full like patch panel on the rear, quarter. And then I did another patch panel on the hole in the rocker. And then the car had so many other like low stone chips and dents and stuff that I was basically like, well, I'm gonna have to repaint it anyway. And I'm not gonna pay someone to repaint it because the chassis was $3,000 and the paint job's 10. So how does that make any sense, right? Yeah. And then I rattle canned it because I didn't want to have to worry about like getting the right mixture of solvent and hardener and paint. And also like in order to buy like an air compressor is cheap, right? But an air compressor that can run a gun consistently is really expensive
Keep
to
the
have
pressure high.
Yeah. And then I was like, okay, either buy like a $1,500 compressor than everything else, or I just rattle can it. So I just bought rattle cans, but I bought like really high-end rattle cans because I still wanted it to be durable. End finish looks okay. Looks okay for a race car.
Which means, 10 feet away.
Yeah,
Thumbs up.
Yeah, it's like a 10-footer.
I wouldn't say that though. I wouldn't say that because I saw your car. We met at TMP, I think a couple months ago. We were both at a track day, and I saw your paint, and I was like, I can't believe you did this in your garage, dude. That's crazy.
What you said was accurate, which is like it's like one good buff and polish away from like being really good.
My garage is available, baby.
But like now I've already like got like a bunch of rock chips on it. I'm like, well, the process has started. I may as well just let it look like maybe. But now I've got a kid on the way, so I'm trying not to spend any money.
Congrats.
Congrats.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Wow.
It's life changing.
Never mind. Don't come here. Save your money. Don't come to my garage.
You guys
Don't let
had
me.
you got to start creating your family Google sheet of like which weekends you're away. Just start doing it now.
Oh, you know already, don't you?
No, I'm really intentionally trying to have like no track plans because this shit can go really, really well or it can go really, really badly, and I want to be like completely available.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be like a true adult, so don't even ask me what I'm doing next
I'll give
year.
you a little foreshadow. Once you have kids, you start thinking about overlanding. And then you start thinking about like getting like 4x4s and like, oh man, I want to get this because I want to take my kids camping. They're gonna love going camping. You're just like specking out these like crazy TRD pros. You're like, yeah, that's me now. That's me now.
No, I will. I bet you I'll bet you like $1,000.
We'll just talk. We'll just talk next year, next summer. We'll see.
I'm so self-assured. I fucking hate camping, man. I've been camping so many times and I hate it. But yeah, painted the car in my garage. Looks okay. Got tuned on dyno. Made 202 wheel and 172 wheel torque. Yeah, and it's so funny because like I talked to you at TMP.
How many runs did you push your tuner to go? She's like, because it was like 190, 190, 190. He's like, no, I need 200.
We did like we did 40 dyno runs.
40.
Oh my god,
a lot of runs.
But most of it was fighting with traction control.
Okay.
Because the BRZ is so fucking annoying to dyno. Did you guys you guys dynoed the Numi car, right?
Adam did, yeah, but okay. I wasn't there for that.
But I assume you have
experience.
But I assume you've got like a track box in it, so like traction control is off all the time or something.
No.
Okay.
It's factory setting. Either we leave it completely off or we just hold it.
This is like the wheel speed difference.
So okay, like the what I'm getting at is when BRZ when traction control comes on a BRZ on dyno, it doesn't like cut. Like you can't tell what's happening. The only thing that you notice is like you made 150 horsepower, and then you're like, oh, what happened? Is it heat soaking? Is it the coolant temp wasn't consistent enough? Is it like what is it? So like we just kept fighting with traction control, and then even once we figured out it was traction control, getting the damn thing to stay off consistently was a nightmare. And I was kicking myself so hard because I have a track box at home because I run traction off always. And I was kicking myself so hard for not putting it in before the dyno day because we wasted so much time fighting with traction control.
Even in service mode, it doesn't like to play. Or sorry, people call it the pedal dance.
Well, the problem is you have to turn the car off.
Yeah, so I resets it every time.
Yeah. So and the pedal dance is like difficult to do. And I wasn't driving the car on the dyno, so my tuner didn't know how to do the pedal dance. So I mean, honestly, like just holding the button down for 10 seconds ended up doing it. But you just had to be careful to make sure that it didn't turn back on you. Yeah. Because the BRZ, like even if you hold the button down for 10 seconds, it can still kind of get upset.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made 202 wheel, made 172 torque. And it's funny because I tell people that and they usually get super disappointed. Unless it's like you, like I told you that at TMP and you were like, yo, that's sick. And I was like, wow, only
One person. He did it. He did it for one person.
Only an FRS person can get excited about
We've been racing our FRS. We've been racing our car for like 4 years, and like
202 would be life changing for you
dude.
guys.
We have always wanted to join. Just make 200 wheel club, and we aren't there yet.
Yeah. I still think if I downed the car in like March though, it would have made a lot more.
Yeah.
Because intake temps were like 33 and I couldn't get them any colder. So I think like, and we downed the car in fourth gear instead of fifth, which I only realized after the fact is 1-to-1 on that car. So I think I think like 202 is very conservative, which is why when people drive it, they're like, yeah, that shit feels good.
Sick.
Yeah, it's a good car. It's super exciting. And then like you were alluding to like, oh, like philosophy, like coming off the FRS. The philosophy of the BRZ was I want it to be fast, but I want it to be easy. So like I want like the FRS was like yeah, I did a 19 on TMP and did a 36 at GP, but that was like I said, carrying shit tons of EA5 to events, which was a nightmare, and always running brand new AL52s. I wanted the BRZ to be as fast, but like on shitty RT660s on pump gas. Like an easy, fast, quote unquote fast, depending on who you are, track car.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel weird saying that around like other time attack people because like Scott was saying in the other episode, like now at CSCS, like 14 is like meh, right? But like I'm happy running 20s.
Well, it's all relative, right?
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. People running 14s, if you compare the corner min speeds,
It's like the same as ours.
It's all the same,
Yeah.
which tells you all of it is coming on the straights. The one area where we'll say, like, I think the higher horsepower cars, it takes, some courage is corner exit.
Yeah.
Especially with like a high power rear wheel drive car. Like that's something that we, in our like 200 horsepower cars, we don't have to worry about as much.
Yeah. Like I'm
Yeah.
flat before the apex.
Yeah.
And then I drove Jason's M2 and I was like, oh,
Yeah, it requires a little bit more, discipline. And like I've seen, like one of our mutual friends with Jay, Jim, who recently did a 13.9 in an M2C, no aero,
Jesus.
right? He like when he said 13, I'm the only thing I could think of is like the entries and exits must have been insane.
Yeah.
Like you have to like really be squeezing the throttle and sliding the car, right? Like
Jesus.
that's just like putting
Power
everything
mods?
out there. I don't know. I think it's like pretty close to stock.
That's crazy for no arrow and
No
close to stock.
arrow.
That's
Yeah.
nuts.
Yeah, it was nuts. It was nuts. When he told us, like, we were just driving back from Shannonville, Lucky Dog, and Jay was like having an identity crisis. I'm like, dude, you gotta retire now. You gotta retire. He was like,
He put so much into his car.
oh man, he was like, man, what am I doing?
It's probably just tire alignment and like massive balls.
Yeah.
Like zero fucks given about the longevity of that car.
Wow,
Yeah.
dude. What a
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Well, even for you, man, not like a 36 full weight, did a 19 full weight, like that's good.
Yeah.
It's freaking fast.
But to come back to the high horsepower thing though, like this is where like I get annoyed about OTA, is because like with the overall championship, you're trying to compare like Chris Paczynski and his Camaro SS to like Will and his Civic, and like you can kind of do that with math, but the commitment and the courage it takes to drive a high horsepower car at pace is so much higher than any low horsepower car. I've got the wherewithal to say that like I'm not there. Like anytime I drive a high horsepower car, I'm like, I've got so much to learn to get to this. Because yeah, like to your points, like you can just be flat before the apex and the car won't do anything. Like it's never going to step out on you on exit.
Yeah, like one of the things that I noticed when I was doing time attack with my GTI. You have a GTI too.
Yeah.
I love the GTI. And TA class, which is one of the lower classes, was especially when I was at, actually I think pretty much at all the tracks. It was basically that when I was approaching every corner, I was basically just thinking like, okay, how much turn in, how much entry speed so that I don't overheat the tires. That's all I was thinking about. Literally, that's all I was thinking about.
But then you mount the throttle,
right?
Then you forget it. Just go.
No, but again, like, but then, you know, I think back to when I was on a really good day, you know, like when I was driving, let's say like when I did my 34 at DDT with the supercharged FRS, all I was thinking was like, how much speed can I carry without the rear stepping out? Like, how do I feel that I have enough courage to step on the throttle a little bit sooner? Like with a supercharger, like there's enough slip in the rear that like you can make yourself feel a little bit nervous on exit. But like it's completely different. It's a completely different experience. Like when I was doing the GTI, even just driving at GP, like you were in the car with me a few times, right? Like you just have no fear. You just like chuck it in. It's fine. Going down turn 4, like it's like even if the rear steps out, you're like, it's front wheel drive. It's okay. I'll just pull out of it with throttle, right, or something like that. It's a very different driving experience.
Or even the sheer pace, like approaching turn A at GP at 250 and approaching it at 180 are very different experiences.
Yeah,
and they require very different levels of commitment. Yeah, and I think that deserves like a lot of respect. Yeah,
for sure. One thing I really respect about how you've kind of gone through this process is you started documenting things as they went along, right? And I think one thing to not be missed in doing that from a reader and an observer's perspective is that you're kind of committed to telling the story, no matter how it goes, because you've started the story, right? You know what I mean? Whereas like, you know, other content creators might tell you this a bit of a revisionist story at the end of like, oh, like here's everything we did and it was sunshine and rainbows and everything was perfect for me, right? Everything went through perfectly to plan. But I will say one of the things that I found interesting was when you wrote about your rattle can experience. One of the lines in that article was like, I wasn't sure if I was going to write this because it was kind of dependent on how this was going to turn out, right? So where do you kind of see, or where do you draw the line in terms of like thinking about what do you share, what do you hold back, how transparent do you want to be in kind of telling this story versus how do you make this a good story in its own, whether it's, you know, slightly derivative of the truth, you know?
Did I really say that?
I don't know. Maybe I'm being revisionist now. Maybe we'll pull it out later. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
I like to think that I'm a bit of an open book. Like not a bit of an open book. I would like to think that I'm really an open book. Like the only time I hold back is if like I think that the consequences of saying what I'm gonna say are high. I like you're shitting on someone, then it's gonna come back to bite you. Because I've written things and then I've had people that like I completely did not intend to offend be like livid after.
Yeah.
And it's the weirdest.
I know Giuliano's really easy to offend. He gets offended so easily.
Not for a really long time, but like I often find myself like you don't think of yourself as having a voice, right? No one does. So you just go out on your little blog and you write some stuff and you put it out there and you're like, oh, I'm just a dude and no one's really going to take what I say too seriously because why would they? I'm just some like random ass guy with a BRZ. I think they do, and you're like, what? Like, why are you taking my opinion that seriously, right? So the only time I hold back is when I think I might like step on toes. But I'm very self-deprecating. Like if I screw up, I'm going to tell everybody I screwed up. Like one of the first things I did after wrecking the car was writing about wrecking the car. Hell, one of the first things I did after wrecking the car was putting a picture of the wrecked car on Instagram. And that surprised a lot of people. But my reason for that was like, I didn't want to have to tell everybody that I wrecked my car 300 times. I just wanted everyone to know and then like never ask me about it, you know? So I don't think I held anything back in terms of the entire series. The only thing I was like a little bit nervous about was like, oh, like everyone's gonna know that my car's a bottle shitbox, but it is a bottle shitbox, so.
So like, I mean, when I look at something like that, right, it for car people, I think because like there is a certain level of materialism, because I mean cars are very material things. We're always thinking about like what's the new, right?
Yeah.
and keeping something very pristine and, you know, super clean and polished and no scratches, and like don't wear jeans around my car kind of situation, right? But when you look at a car like yours, it's not about the car as much as what that car represents in terms of now your capabilities, in terms of how much easier perhaps like this hobby can become in the future because of all the skills and experiences and connections that you made.
Yeah.
Right. That makes everything from here on out moving forward so much more sustainable as a hobby.
Yeah. Well, there's that, because that's really true. Like gaining the experience of doing paint and body work, especially because most people can't do that. And body shops are notoriously difficult to work with, right? So that's a good skill to have. But I think the bigger thing is like you said, like car people tend to be very materialistic. Because at the end of the day, like these are very expensive things that hold their value fairly well. Then you don't want to mess with them because you're worried about resale and blah, blah, blah. But what's nice about a build like that is you can almost, because you're starting at a point that is so cheap, like the chassis itself, after I parted out what it came with, was about $3,000. So when you're paying so little for a chassis, you stop looking at it like a car that has value, and you start looking at it like an art project.
Yeah. It's a canvas.
Yeah. So at that point, you're like, well, what's the worst that can happen? Like it was a shitbox before, so maybe it'll be a shitbox after. But maybe it won't be. Maybe it might be good. Like then you can kind of like approach it with this like egalitarian, like almost like an artist's perspective, rather than like thinking about it as this thing that has to be cherished and taken care of. Especially when you're building a track car, because like they get messed up at the track. Like even if you don't wreck the car, like my FRS was, you would have hated it. Like it was so stone chipped. Like the entire, like it looked like it had been through like a gravel compactor, you know, like, yeah, because that's kind of what happens after a while. Right. So yeah, I think that's the best part of a build like that, is you get to step away from like the really materialistic side of car culture, and then just be like, oh, fuck it. Just cut it up, go for it. You know, like, oh, almost like, this is a terrible analogy, but almost like the attitude that like RWB has.
Yeah, that's getting so much play these days. Yeah, everyone's got to add their 2 cents about RWB these days. Why not us?
No, but like it's so true though, because like, man, like we love cars, we love modifying cars, and I often feel like we let the value of them get in the way. And I get it, because like at the end of the day, money's a thing, capitalism's a thing. You got to play within the rules. But it does kind of suck, you know?
Yeah.
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 So yeah, cut up your cars.
Cut up your cars. Don't look back.
Yeah.
So let's say now it feels like you've kind of closed one chapter of this car's life, and that, like, you know, you got it to the point where it's running. You've done some track days with it already, right? Yeah. Looking to the, let's say, like the beginning of the journey of bring the wrecked Firestorm FRS back home to, you know, that first track day and this new, what do you call this color? Baby blue, powder blue?
Technically it's Gulf blue.
Gulf blue.
Yeah,
Gulf blue.
Yeah, from
Gulf blue BRZ.
Yeah.
What was most surprising in this journey?
How I'm gonna hate myself when the motor blows up. Not if,
Knock
but
on
when.
wood.
Yeah. But how straightforward the engine build ended up being.
Yeah.
Like it truly was like I put it together. Obviously, I was super careful. Obviously, I checked everything like 6,000 times. When I was putting the blog together, I was literally like live DMing like Adam Man, sending pictures of my RTV, being like, "Does this look right? Does this look good?
Is this enough?"
Yeah. But the most surprising thing was like how.
Are you a smear guy, or are you just lay the bead guy?
It depends where.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Well,
All right.
Well, for like the really intricate, it's like when you're putting the case halves together.
Yeah.
I think the spec is like 0.5 millimeter. A half millimeter of thickness, which
Half a mil.
Yeah, which I'm sure in the factory they do by like via machine, right?
That's crazy.
So they can achieve that, but you're never going to achieve that with a tube in your garage. So like smear for that, right? But then, yeah, like for like the stuff that is a little bit less like scary, like the front cover, just lay a nice beat down.
Damn.
Why did you ask me that? No one cares about that.
No, dude, it is like one of the biggest like what is it, like polarizing things
For these motors, it's very important. But also, we referenced RWB, and he just uses the finger, right?
That's true.
No, man, smear versus beat is this is big. This is the wars will be fought. Race wars will be fought over this.
When I was actually putting the case halves together, I like did the RTV, and I was talking to Adam, and he was like, "Oh no, you should have like dabbed it." And I was like stressing, and then I just took the whole thing apart, and then did it again. And like you could see where I went and put too much bead. The RTV bled into the bearings, like the bearings themselves.
Wow,
just scary as shit, because like the mating surface, Subaru, like they did themselves such a disservice by making these cars so, or these motors, not even difficult to service, but like difficult to like consistently manufacture, because like the mating surface for the holes that carry oil across the block like is so small, and then the bearing's right there. So if you over apply, it will literally go right into the bearing, and that's going to end with catastrophe, right?
Oh, that's nuts.
Wow. Yeah. One message to Adam Man saved your motor. It's so cool.
Like 100 messages.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Oh man. So one of the things that I've been snooping. I've been reading your articles that kind of made me go like, what the heck was when you talked about how, because the FA24 has symmetrical connecting rods, you have to assemble the rods on the crank.
Oh God.
Before putting the crank into the block.
Yeah.
That is bizarre. Because all I can think of in my mind is like, oh shit, like you dropped that? All those deads? Oh man, game over.
Dude, I was really kicking myself for not just buying like
an assembled short block.
Yeah, for not just buying an assembled short block. Because I've got this vision in my head of I was standing in my office with the crank and the connecting rods connected on the floor on a foam pad, and I would have to step on the crank with like my shoes in order to torque them to spec, right?
Yeah.
And the whole thing was so fucking backyard. I think you have to drop the entire assembly in. I think you put the pistons in, and then you've got this like nightmare journey of like trying to thread the wrist pin through these holes in the block. Yeah. And I was talking.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was talking to my friend, because the FA20, you just like put the pistons in with the connecting rods bolted together, then you're on your way.
Just tighten up the caps and you're done, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was talking to my friend Jeremy, because he's like a really, really big Porsche guy, and he's like, yeah, like 996s and like old like flat sixes are like that too. And I can only imagine trying to do the same thing, but then you've got like a middle piston to deal with. So yeah, that was really, really annoying.
Yeah. Did you get proper engine building tools, like a bunch of like micrometers and things like that?
I did, but I don't think they ended up being very useful. Because a micrometer was only as good as the operator. And it was my second engine build, my first non-fully OEM engine build.
Yeah.
And I was using all OEM parts.
You just use the standard size, the bearings and stuff like that.
Yeah, so like the FA24 is kind of annoying too. Like the FA20, it's just like standard everything. FA24, there's like a serial number on the crank, and then you have to match the serial number on the crank to the pistons and bearings that you're going to get. So it's a little bit more involved. But yeah, you just kind of figure out what to buy, and then it should just bolt together. So yeah, like I did use my micrometer and like check things, but then like now you're introducing the risk that you're going to scratch the crank with the micrometer, and that's not great. So I ended up just relying on like Toyota giving me the right shit, and like plastic gauge. Like I just plastic gauged everything, and it all looked like it was within spec. So that was the most important thing.
Yeah, because that's a journey that I'm just about to embark on in building the K24. I am using aftermarket connecting rods and bearings.
Yeah. So
I got to measure those clearances with the digital micrometers. At least it's digital, so I don't have to figure out how to read the thing. But no, I'm definitely gonna be scratching up my my crankshaft. Yeah, it's gonna happen. But like whatever, it is what it is. That's the only way you hit the measurements. Like you can have micro scratches. It's really hard to avoid.
Yeah. And like when I say that, like, oh, I'm surprised that people like find the FA24, FA20 build so interesting. It's because when I look at a build like that, I'm like, oh, that takes that takes skill because that takes a lot of math and measuring. And
I look at the photos of what you did, and I do think it is I don't know if it's like an order of magnitude more difficult, but the K24, it's easier ergonomically to work on.
yes, every time I watch somebody build a Honda motor,
Yeah.
I am so jealous.
So like that makes a big difference. Like I'm not gonna have to step on my crankshaft to torque things. So
like I'm like, oh, you just like
yeah, it's just all out in the open.
you just put a gasket down. You have gaskets.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh man.
So there's that.
Yeah. But yeah, when I say that it was simple, that's really what I'm referring to. Because at the end of the day, it was still OEM parts being bolted together. So you can rely on Toyota to just give you the right stuff, and you're not trying to make sure that like this piston works with this connecting rod works with this stroker kit, and all the clearances are correct.
No. Let's talk about the first track day for this car that you were able to take it out, stretch its legs. What do you remember about that day? What was that like?
Breaking it. Okay, so like when you build it, so first off, when you build a car like chassis up, you expect a lot of things to go wrong, right? Because you did everything. So like all it takes is like one or two things to be bad, for like for you to find teething issues. And the other thing that was surprising about this build was that like that never really happened. Like I drove it out of my garage to Toyota front alignment. It was fine. I started putting braking miles on it. It was fine. I did like 800 braking miles. Nothing went wrong. From like the moment I left the garage to braking being done, nothing went wrong. That was crazy, right? But it was at the first track day that like teething issues began to pop up. Mainly, it overheated like crazy. Because I didn't know that the Gen 2 radiator was way bigger than the Gen 1.
Interesting. Okay, yeah.
And I wasn't running the factory rad ducting, which did not help. So it would overheat really, really quickly. And
the foam bits.
Yeah. And I was so grateful to Zach from CSG because he built a safety cutoff into the tune.
Perfect.
So it's not like I had to like blow up the motor to find out it was overheating. It just stopped revving out. So that was great. And then I broke an axle because I reused the axles that came with the car, and the car was a drift car, so that was unwise. But I was on cloud 9, and people keep asking me like if it was worth it, and I kind of hate that question because when they ask me that, they're talking about like dollars and cents, which comes back to like the materialistic part of it, right? Because no, like it's a loaded question. Obviously, it wasn't worth it. I spent 25 grand. And it's still like this Bondo shitbox, right? But it was really satisfying. Like the engine build was really satisfying. Even the paintwork, it was a nightmare. But like after it was all done, just looking at the thing was super satisfying. And having it on track was sick. And also like when you build a car like that, everyone's like hyped. Like everyone thinks it's sick. Which is like, this might be like egotistical, but like that's really satisfying too. To build like a thing that's actually interesting, because like OTA does not encourage you to build interesting things, right? They encourage you to just take a stock car, do the bare minimum, send it, and that's for good reason. But yeah, it was super satisfying. Yeah.
Speaking of OTA, have you gone through the exercise of putting together a point schedule for this car? just for curiosity's sake.
Yeah, no, I have. It's at like the very top of what is it now? GT? Yeah, it's at the very top of GTA.
Okay.
So I'd be fighting with Luke.
But that's reasonable.
Yeah, like it could actually be a pretty fun battle. Yeah.
Well, it's because you did a dyno and weight on it.
Dyno
right?
weight, okay.
Because if it was just like blank like engine replacement, like you'd be through the moon. You'd be in Moss
SGTA or something.
Yeah, that's some crazy shit.
Yeah, I haven't corner balanced the car yet, so I don't actually know its weight. So I guess the weight. And I put the dyno numbers in. And yeah, like it was like the top of GTA, which could actually be a pretty fun fight.
I think so.
Me coming back to OTA isn't an impossibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be exciting.
Yeah.
Was that in the plans for the car?
No. Like I was very intentional, like to not build a car that was good at any one series. Like I really wanted just to build, like, cause I spent 5 years fighting an OTA, right? So I very much just wanted to build a car for me. and this was the end result. It was like, this is the BRZ that I would have built with no rule book in mind.
Yeah.
Still,
yeah. Well, you were mentioning that the rule book for OTA was not like to what you wanted to do, which is why you put the car together. But CSCS now is like lap time based. So is the competition space for you even? I mean, you had a kid,
for anybody.
Yeah, for us.
Oh man, I have so many thoughts about this. So the only like when I built, the only thing I was thinking about when I built it was like, oh, like CSCS production might be fun if I can like convince them to let me run it, because technically it's not obviously it's not a factory motor, but it makes less power than a factory motor, like a factory FA24, and they would allow a factory FA24 swaps. Like maybe I could convince them to let me run production. And I was also
that would be allowed in production.
Well, you can do a cross. You can do an engine swap as long as it's
same
within manufacturer.
Within manufacturer.
So that stays in production class.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Welcome to CSCS. So yeah, you could do like an EG Civic with a K24, and that would still be production, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I was like, oh, maybe that would be fun. I wanted to run CTAC. In fact, I bought RT660s to run Club TR.
Yeah.
And I had them with me the weekend of the crash, and they were like fresh sticker tires.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, when you were trying to sell them.
And then now CTAC's gone, so that's kind of disappointing. So yeah, I was like, oh, maybe production would be fun. I could try running Club TR, that could be fun. But I wasn't like building the car for any one time attack season or series, because I didn't want to get back in that headspace of like everything's for competition. It's like when or what was the point of showing up? I really wanted to just like force myself to just have fun again, because I thought that was a really unhealthy headspace I got into with like I would never show up to a track without a lap timer. I would never run a lap without a lap timer.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything was like preparation for an event. And like when you it can accidentally get to the point where the sport begins to feel like a job.
Yep.
And yeah, I was really trying to avoid falling back into that headspace.
Yeah. I think we get to the point where you can go to a track day, get through it, and go home. It's like, and the way that you reflect back on is like, oh, that was not an enjoyable day.
Yeah.
That's when you need to reflect and just be like, wait a minute.
Yeah, like you're
right?
like, oh man, I didn't run a 19. That was a terrible track day. Meanwhile, you like met people and you had a great time and you drifted and did some very illegal passes. You're on TMP, like, like still a good time, right? Even if the lap timer didn't show what you wanted to show. Yeah. It's important because I think a lot of us like forget that we do this for fun, which is such a weird thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally the part of the meaning behind Two Track Mind is like, we are obsessed with cars, but we have to leave part of the mind for everything else.
Yeah.
Because we're not professionals, right? Now, looking back on this part of your automotive journey, was there anything that you would have done differently? I know you said like maybe just bought a short block from factory, but anything else? For people who might be thinking about doing the same thing?
I wouldn't have wrecked the FRS.
Okay, well,
that's one thing.
I mean, but would you not have though? Like, just actually, like, real question. Just thinking about like where you are today and this journey.
I think I had to learn a lesson. I think I had to learn that like, oh, like this shit can have consequences and those consequences can hurt.
Yeah.
Because if not, I don't think I'd be the same person. So it was probably a good lesson to learn. Like, I don't know, like I could have bought a weight clearance chassis, but it was satisfying to save that car. I would like now 2024 Philip, or I told you to call me Phil. Now
big slip.
2024 me like is like, oh, like it'd be fun to do an S2000, but I'm only saying that because I've already done the FA24 thing, right? So I think the only things I would change are like I said, I would have bought a factory short block because I think I only saved about $1,000 by going with Jason's block, and $1,000 is not worth the uncertainty that me putting that block together has created in my head. And I would have bought a compressor. I would have just said screw it and bought a compressor. Because I think like what I said before about like, oh, like you have to buy a really high-end compressor, like sure. But when you're comparing compressor to spray paint, I think even a cheek compressor is better. So I would have gone that route. Yeah.
That's not bad. Consider all things considered, I think those are fairly minor things.
Yeah. I would have bought a different roll cage. I hate my half cage.
He's got the same one you have.
Oh, the Titan one? You have the Titan one?
You've got a Titan?
Yeah, I have the Titan one too.
I don't like it.
You know, like, well, okay, what I mean, I'm neither here nor there on it, but what would you change?
Well, when I got it, I don't think I realized that like it's meant to bolt into a car with no holes in the chassis.
Yep.
But I don't think you can actually do that and have a safe roll cage.
Yeah, the connecting to the rear deck is a little bit weird.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's one thing. Like at least you have like bolts into factory threaded holes that were meant to hold load. Like because they thread into the factory seatbelt brackets for the baby seat.
Yes.
But it's the front where
not that kind of load though.
Yeah.
Not coming down onto it, but yeah.
Well, the sketchy thing for me is the front because it just has the one bolt that shares the load with the seatbelt.
Yeah.
Which is really sketchy. So I ended up adding another hole and put like a big like high grade M12 through it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that it's not good. And I paid like $3,000 for it.
Yeah,
it's not good. Yeah.
Not cheap.
Yeah.
You had a auto power before, right?
Yeah. And that was also a mistake because it was such a nightmare to put in. Because it was so DIY. And then like, I mean, you fought this fight, right? Like trying to get the hole right in the rear, that rear bit of plastic.
Wheel arch?
Yeah, it's like really, really tough. And like,
It's at an angle. You gotta do a hole saw at an angle.
yeah, and like good luck figuring out where. So that looked terrible too. Which is, and when I wrecked the car, I couldn't take it out to put into a different chassis, which might be sketchy. Please don't flame me for that too much.
I didn't have to deal with that. I had Jesse Ferguson do my auto power bar.
Okay,
so shout out White Pine Welding.
Because the problem too is like I was trying to do everything in my garage because again I didn't have a motor, the car couldn't drive, so like a bolt-in bar was kind of the only solution for me. But yeah, in retrospect, like a guy like Jesse or even like NV, like that would have been a way better idea. And honestly, it would have been like the same price, and it would have been way nicer.
Yeah.
I think you've covered around that topic, right? Like about doing it on your own, the cost of like trying to be a DIY versus like just taking it to a professional flat out. Like,
yeah. That was one of the video topics that I had. And I think, like the thesis there is just you have to manage your resources, which is just like for me it was like time was the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And that like if I put too much time into doing these things that are enjoyable at certain levels in terms of certain amounts, right? When you go overboard and working on the car and that prevents you from actually going to the track, then, you know, it becomes a bit of an issue. But speaking of things like, you know, people who actually like read the content or look at the content and have issues with it, like some people like misinterpret it as like, oh, like this guy has the money to spend, but not everyone is in has the same opportunities, right? Like where their only opportunity is to do it themselves, and that was never really the intention, right? Like it was more of like a reflection of like the materialism and the lack of I think it was less lack of trust and more just like willingness to let go and willingness to not have everything be to like the exactness that I personally wanted, right? But I mean with roll bars, I think the rule of thumb, like everyone knows, like Bolton's never going to be as good as welded.
Yeah.
People just get a little skittish around welding and cutting, right? So that makes sense, especially if you want to like remove it later.
Yeah. The whole DIY versus non-DIY thing is interesting though, because like assuming that you have a high attention to detail, I genuinely do think that most of the time when you DIY things, you'll have a better result because you're going to spend 10 hours on a thing that a professional would do in 1 hour. And they're just going to knock it out, right? Especially when you get into stuff like engine building. However, it's like, that's a really loaded statement because it implies that you're going to be diligent enough to do your research. You're going to have the connections and people like Adam to reach out to get advice. You're going to have the money to buy all the specialized equipment. So it is like it's a difficult thing. And I don't go around telling people, oh, you should just DIY everything. Because I realize that even DIYing everything comes with a certain amount of privilege. Because you have to have a space. You have to have a space that you can leave a car on jack stands for an entire winter. You have to have, a lot of time. You have to have not unlimited resources, but you have to have enough resources where, like, if you have to redo something, you're not going to be heartbroken. Because everyone who DIYs a lot of shit also knows that you end up redoing a lot of shit. Because that's the nature of DIY, right? And you often end up spending the same amount of money that you would just get professional to do it. Like, case in point, like, this isn't a one-to-one example, but I could get NV to build me a motor for 10 grand. So instead I spent 10 grand building a motor, right? Yeah. And it probably wouldn't be a hybrid FA24, but it'd be a built motor, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, like, I think you have to do, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I don't think people should DIY because it's what they can afford. I think people should DIY because they want to. Because if you're doing it just because it's what you can afford, you might not be happy with the result,
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you might have to redo it. It might take twice as long, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. It kind of also connects with, like, this other thought of, everyone can be very meticulous and gung-ho about getting their hands dirty and putting in that extra effort in spheres of their life that they're really passionate about, they really care about, right? And so one thing that I've noticed is, like, let's say work life versus personal life, right? Or hobby life or at-home life, right? Like, you obviously went super deep, learned a lot of mechanical skills, and did so much, like, basically, like, everything that you could do yourself, you did yourself in this build, right? Like, you didn't have a CNC, so, like, you had to go find a friend to help you do that, but, like, everything else you did, right? Yeah. But contrast that to your work life, and I know you're a product manager, right?
Oh, and you really went deep.
Yeah, well, so here's the thing, right? What I know about product, having done some of that myself, is you rarely do anything to completion by yourself.
Yeah.
Right? You're working with designers, you're working with copy, front end, back end, maybe legal sometimes, right? How do you kind of blend that, or, like, is that really just, like, the division of how you think about, like, work and how that works versus, a hobby? You're much more willing to just do everything if you can.
I think tech is the reason why I have to wrench, honestly. Because, like, one, it's physical, right? Like, if you work in software, nothing you ever produce, like, sure, you can go show somebody the app that you created. But it's never going to have, like, the same, like, physicality of, like, oh, like, this car in front of you. So I think producing a physical product is a really, really beautiful and satisfying thing. And then also, yeah, like, when you're, like, I'm a keyboard warrior. Like, if I write code at work, I'm probably not using my time very well. So not doing anything yourself and just sitting in meetings all day really leaves you longing for, like, actually producing something, right?
Makes sense. Trying to get what you can't get from work in your hobbies, right?
And I think you see that a lot. Like, if you, like, I've noticed that there are a lot of content creators who, like, DIY crazy builds, and they all work in software because, one, this is where the privilege comes in. They've got the money. And two, they've got the time, and they're not, like, burnt out from work because their jobs are not physical. They're just at a desk all day. So you like leave work, like, giddy and, like, energized. maybe you're, like, mentally burnt out, but you're not physically burnt out, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So you can easily go into the garage after dinner and, like, knock out 3 hours of wrenching.
Yeah. It's meditative.
Read me like a book. Oh my God.
Yeah. That's meditative. I get it. For sure.
Yeah. No, it's super meditative. I don't think I'd ever paint a car again, though.
There's always a few things where it's like, yeah, that was fun once and never again if I can help it. I get that.
Like, oh, detailing, dude. I'm never detailing a car ever again. I did not realize how time consuming, how sweaty it is. Yeah. Like I understand why detailers charge what they do 1000%.
Yeah, you just even from just an hour's perspective, it's easy. Very easy to see why. Yeah. Well, we've been going for almost 2 hours now. Jesus. This has been an amazing conversation. is there anything that's still on your chest you want to get out there before we move on to the very last segment of the podcast?
I don't know. You mentioned bracket racing. That's not time attack.
Damn.
Mic drop. Mic drop. Ooh.
No, I'm sorry. Like this idea that like it comes from this idea that like, oh, like you want to create a space for new people, that way they can come. They've got like a shot of winning something.
So this is a direct rebuttal to Scott right here.
I don't listen. Patrick, if you went to your non-racing colleague, right, and you tried to describe time attack to them, how would you describe time attack?
I usually start off with like cars are put into a class based on some criteria of power to weight ratio, and within that class you must get the fastest time.
Okay,
that's my description.
Right. So now you're not putting cars into class based on power to weight or mods or anything about the car. You're just putting into class based on the time that I did. And yeah, like I don't, it comes from this idea that like, oh, like we want new people to join the sport, but I don't think new people want to be like patronized too. I don't think they want to be like given a participation trophy, Yeah. And also, OTA is often not time attack for the same reason. Do I need to elaborate or?
A little bit on that. I'm curious.
So like, I think OTA's got a problem of being confusing outsiders, right? And I think the main reason why OTA has a problem of being confusing outsiders is because like often you'll look at like the podium and like third place set a track record, but they lost the event, And it's because of packs. And I think the moment you've got a car losing its class that was the fastest in the class, it's not time attack. And I desperately want somebody to like come into OTA and shake it up, because I want to see that get fixed. Because I think it's just weird. Like imagine if like Lucky Dog, like you finished, like you did like, oh God, I don't even know endurance racing, but like you did 200 laps and like the car behind you did 158, but they didn't have they had a passenger seat and you didn't. So they apply a PAX factor and now they did 201 laps and they won the event. Like that'd be crazy, right? And that's kind of what I see happening. And it's weird, but I don't know if they'll ever change because they've been doing it like that since the 80s.
It's its own thing. OTA is its own thing.
It's great. Like I love OTA. It's the most entry level series, but it's weird. Like it's weird to call it time attack. I love it. I really do love it. I did 5 years of it, but it's weird to call it time attack.
Damn.
Yeah.
There it is. There it is. All right.
And that's the last episode y'all ever did.
We'll see. We'll have to bring Kevin back on and get his rebuttal.
I'll fight with Kevin on this all day
Let's
long.
Go.
Man.
Roll up the sleeves. Let's go.
Yeah.
All right. Let's hop on to our final segment. So we like to do this thing with our guests called the Modest Dream Garage. You get $200,000 and you get to pick 3 cars that need to satisfy all your needs for your family. What are you picking?
Does it have to be 3?
Yeah. Why? What are you thinking?
Okay.
You want 2? You want 1?
No.
Oh, you want 4?
No, I'm dude. I am a cheap ass. Okay?
All right.
So let me.
Oh, 200 is too much.
200's a lot, man.
But that's why it's still a dream garage. You gotta dream bigger. You gotta dream bigger.
$3,000 BRZ.
Yeah,
Come on, this is what we're starting with.
Okay. Factor in the time for your labor.
$100,000 BRZ. Okay. If I had to do the 3 car thing, I think it'd be.
And we got like 5 minutes left on this SD card. So.
Jesus Christ. All right. I talk too much.
No, we're good. This has been great.
Volvo V60.
Okay, that's a great car.
Wagon,
Nice
daily.
Stick.
They look great.
Yeah. C6 Grand Sport for the track car.
Grand Sport. Oh, this guy is a man of the culture here on the Grand Sport. He knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, and it's gotta be C6 because it's gotta be old enough that I can still wrench in it because I don't know how to stop myself. I then probably like like an FD.
An FD.
Yeah, like an FD.
You really like that the shape of that body, huh?
It's the rotary. Like the
no swap for you on that one. Huh?
The stock 13B is a giggle machine. It's so entertaining. But
yeah, it's so entertaining when you're at the gas station. You have to put oil into your tank.
Honestly, man, I've driven a lot of RX-7s and I completely get it. Like it's forget the lap time, forget the fuel economy. It's just the way those things feel on boost is incredible. And somehow it makes all the sense in the world. And also, like, I've never had a fuel efficient car in my life. Like, who gives a shit? But no, what I want to say is like legit what I'm doing, which is like BRZ, GTI, probably a Mustang, and probably an FD, because I think that's like because like GTI winter, Mustang also winter, but stupid winter. BRZ track car and FD for like the classic 4 days a year kind of thing.
Yeah. What is, so I know you've like written a lot about the Mustang. It's so unlike all the other cars that you're really interested in my opinion. So like where does this come from? It's just young, impressionable Phil, you know, when he was.
Yeah. Like I think we all have some of that, as much as we pretend to be objective. Like my parents had a Fox Body at one point. I can think of a few Mustangs in my youth just being around I thought were sick. But it's just like we spend so much time being like chassis dynamics and quarter entry and harmonic frequency of the suspension and like min-maxing the car and blah, blah, blah. A V8 Mustang is like an American cheeseburger in like the best way, where it's so overpowered.
Man, you're making me hungry.
And so soft, and it sounds so good, and it's so stupid, but it's like wonderful, you know?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be good. It just can sound good. It can like be stupid fast, and it's fun, right? Yeah.
Those are some great choices. So Volvo.
See, the problem with the Volvo trio is that it doesn't leave a car for my wife.
Oh, you're not sharing? Wow.
No, but I don't want to share a car because I live in Hamilton, and you can't walk anywhere in Hamilton, right?
That's true.
So I'd rather do the GTI, the Mustang, as like all-weather cars, than FD and BRZ.
So, okay, but you just told me that you guys are expecting...
GTI.
That's what I'm doing right now, and I'm telling you, man, you're underestimating how a baby accessorizes. Okay, like, have you guys picked out like a stroller yet? Like those things are massive.
We have, and I'm going to assume that you're being a little bitch.
Oh,
because I have to. Because I've got no other choice. Because I really like that car as a doing.
Okay, I love it. And when we had Frankie, my son, we were like, oh, this is great. We have GTI. Like, it's so practical, so much space. A couple months in, I was just like, I can't keep doing this. I can't do this. You know, one thing I will say, because you live in a house, that makes things a lot easier. I live in a condo, so I have to reconfigure the car constantly.
Right.
Constantly taking things in, out, and just like at this point, I'm just like, I haven't put winter tires on my GTI because every single day I'm flirting with the idea of driving up to a dealership and trading it in for an SUV or something.
Today, dude.
I know, I'm still on my RS4s. It's crazy. It's crazy. I'm just like, oh, it's flurries. Like, I'm just looking at how reflective the ground is. Like, is it damp? Is it damp? I was like,
it's ice now.
Okay,
legit.
It's okay. We'll figure it out. We'll make it. We'll make it.
Here's the thing. I actually don't like the GTI that much.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I think it's a great daily, but like it doesn't like excite me in any way. I think it's like it's fun, but like it doesn't have like that like je ne sais quoi that you need for like a really fun car. But my wife really likes it, and my wife doesn't care about cars at all. So I found the one car that she really, really likes, and she wants to keep it. And I want that for her. So I really want to make it work.
How thoughtful.
Yeah. Well, no, just this girl who just doesn't care about cars. I finally found a car she really likes. So I want to keep it because it's a good car, and I want to try and make it work with a baby.
Godspeed. Good luck. Tell me how you feel in a couple of months.
Man, if you see me in a V60 in a couple of months, you know why.
Yeah. There you go. All right. Any last words, shout outs that you want to give?
I don't know. My friends, my team, quote unquote, we were a team. Like this, like I'm not that smart, right? This engine build came together with a lot of help from Giuliano and Jason Olnick, Corvette guy, and obviously like Eugene and all of them. Adam, man, like God, I asked him so many damn questions. He sent me so many docs. Just like all the people that I surround myself with that made this happen. Even like Thale and Max, who like showed up at Jover's yard to help me load the BRZ. Like these cars get built with a village, right? Yeah.
Awesome. This has been super fun. And I think like the amount of time we've been recording for makes it very evident that we're having a great time here. Like always with our episodes, if you have any questions for Phil, for us about this build, I'm sure there's a lot of interest in trying to unpack like everything that's in his head. Find the YouTube video for this episode. So if you're on Spotify, I mean, you can post it there too, but I think we'll be more responsive on the YouTube comments. Just post your questions there and we'll make sure that Phil gets eyes on it. But yeah.
I'm sorry
About what?
for anything.
No, this is great. We should be thanking you.
I feel like I run my mouth a lot, and then I regret it later.
No,
So,
that's why you're here. We wanted you to run your mouth.
Putting everyone on notice, man. Watch
also,
out.
2 hours. Who the fuck's gonna listen to me for 2 hours?
You'd be
lot of people
surprised.
will.
You'd be
Wow.
surprised,
Yeah.
especially for this content, man. It's a special one. All right. We'll call it. And we'll see you guys
I don't know
on the
where
next
shit-
one. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.